Hello, this is David Murray making a video for PokerSpot.com. This is the second video in my series of an introduction to Pot Limit Omaha, to Heads Up Pot Limit Omaha. And I'm going to be playing two tables here of Heads Up, one 51 table and one 1-2 table here on PokerStars. And during this video I'm going to try and go into a bit more detail, expand a bit more on what we talked about the last video, go into some more interesting stuff. I suppose the main thing in Heads Up is to start adapting to your opponent, to get used to your opponent's predictability. The real biggest mistake and the biggest problem for most people in Heads Up is that they do play too predictable, that you can tell when they're giving up on a pot. You can tell when they're going to be continuation betting a lot. You can tell if they're likely to bluff the river in a certain spot, and you can take advantage of that then by giving them the opportunity to make mistakes when you know they're going to make mistakes. People also make the same kind of typical mistakes that they make in any poker game, that they play too loose out of position, play too many hands. A big one on this is also that they would call too much on the early streets, for example on the flop and the turn, and end up folding the next street. I'm going to play a big pot with this guy here. He's been pretty aggressive, and I think he could be moving in here with anything like a jack and a diamond draw or something, and certainly any number of lower tens, even if he wouldn't have 3-bet the flop. And hand values go down a lot in Pot Limit Omaha, or go up depending which way you look at it. Non-nut straights and flushes become much more valuable, especially for one bet. If you're only faced with calling one bet or making one bet with a non-nut straight or flush, there's a very good chance that it's going to end up being good. Once you get to a situation where two bets are going in on a street, especially in the river, or there's a bet and a raise, it's less likely that you're going to be able to get a value raise in with a non-nut flush. It's more likely to be the nuts or nothing. There are some spots where you might get away with some very thin value. This situation here is kind of interesting. I think I'll just give up. I don't really have much of a draw anymore, and now I've got 3 5s. This guy's been pretty bluffy, so I'm just going to call him here. And I don't really think I would have got much value from anything else. Here's a non-nut straight. Not a great spot maybe, but you might think, but with a flush draw as well, I was sticking it in there. Without the flush draw, I would have been much more careful with that non-nut straight. I would have probably just have called him there. That's a shame. This guy has gone away. I'll try and find another table for you now. One pair still isn't a great hand, even in Heads Up, but certainly worth calling here with one pair. Top kicker. I've made 2 pairs. This guy is continuing on to bet on the turn. I don't really know what this means from this guy, if he's going to follow up all the time on the turn if I show weakness here, but I'm not really willing to call and face another bet out of position on the river just to try and find out. As regards pre-flop hand values, I suppose the ranking of hands, or which hands are better, is more or less the same as in a longer handed game. You're just going to be playing much more hands, or almost every hand is openable from the button. A lot of hands are going to be defensible from the blinds. There's an interesting spot here, 3-bet pot. I'm just going to bet and get it in here. Bottom 2 pair, but not usually a good hand, but it's in the 3-bet pot. It wasn't that likely he'd anything other than 3 queens if it beat me. And once he checks, he's giving up. Okay, this isn't an ideal hand to 3-bet over here. Okay, I'm going to call this. It's not a huge amount more. See what the flop brings. Still a kind of worrying flop. We've got the nut flush draw, but I don't just want to lump it all in. Okay, like I said, hand values do change a lot in heads up, but it's still likely. It still means I should probably take someone seriously if he goes making 4-bet pre-flop, and a big pair is quite likely. Okay, I led the turn. I was thinking of checking the turn, but well, I did. He seemed to give me action anyway when I let it out, and now he's gone as well. So hopefully, hopefully I can get some more opponents. I'm sitting out at some more tables off the screen where you can't quite see them. So if someone else comes along in those tables, I will be able to play for you. Okay, he just wants to play again. That's good. Again, top pair. This time in position. I'm gonna call off a bet. He checks the turn. I could consider betting. I've turned a kind of straight draw. I'm probably just going to check. It's not particularly drawy board, especially on the flop. I think 2 pair is actually quite likely, and I don't fancy my chances of trying to bluff him off 2 pair, so I'll check it back. I just got 1 bigger pair. Okay. I thought a top and bottom pair was a very likely hand from there on the flop. Continuation betting, gonna plough on the flop a lot of the time. This is a spot. He checked the calls the flop. Checks the turn very quickly. I bet here because I think there's a decent chance that he's just that he just called the flop with a draw, and especially after the very quick turn check, he could be trapping with a big hand. But I thought a bluff was likely to get through there. This guy's led the flop. It's a pretty bad overpair. I'm just going to fold. I'm going to very rarely fold with a 3-bet in heads up. You know, I like to call 3-bets in general in position, and especially in heads up where they might have a higher range, a wider range. There's a pretty loose call here with just a queen high flush draw. This guy has shown some propensity to give up on the turn, give me possibly a free card, maybe give me a chance to bluff it on the turn. I'm just going to check this back. I've turned a nut straight draw as well. And should I bluff this? Well, I might have considered bluffing a different river card, but the deuce isn't really a good one for me to represent anything. I think I'll just let it go. And he's got an overpair again. Okay. Maybe he would have folded to a bet. Maybe betting the turn was even better because I did not a straight draw there. I checked back the turn. Too many non-nut outs here. Maybe I could have led the flop. I don't really think a check raise looks realistic. I'll just fold here. Here I've flopped a flush and straight draw. I'll lead out. And again, calling a 3-bet with this pretty bad hand. And okay, very small flop bet. I'll just fold anyway. I like to 3-bet from time to time. This isn't the best of hands to 3-bet with. This semi-big pair. Especially against a guy who's a little bit more passive maybe than my previous opponent here. Maybe a bit more passive than this guy over here as well. But still, it's a decent hand to mix it up with. This is an okay flop to lead here. Not that likely I've got a 3, but not that much he can call me with either. It's a pretty marginal hand to defend the blind, but I could just fold here. I flopped 2 pairs, hoping to check raise the flop. Instead, I'll just fire the turn. That's a pretty good flop for me here. The thing about this guy is he's shown a willingness to stack off in big pots. That 4-bet pot earlier, there's still quite a bit of money left, but he got it in quite easily on the turn. I wouldn't really consider slow playing this. I think raising is likely to get the money in. And well, let's hope he didn't turn 3 kings or something, but I guess a spade draw is more likely. Okay, and he didn't have very much, just a bad straight draw. Again, this is a kind of weak hand to go calling a 3-bet with, even in position. And I just fold the flop. And these small pair hands, there's no real form of Omaha where you want to make a habit of playing these, especially out of position. So I'll just fold this fairly easily. This guy's run away again. I'm not sure what the best way is to get another opponent. I'm at this other table here. Sometimes I think that it might be easier to get an opponent if I wasn't sitting here with a triple stack, but I have another table here with just $200 open as well. And you don't have to open every hand from the button. Okay, if you flop top pair here, kickers aren't that great this time. I'll call 1-bet. I say this guy again. He's been giving up a lot on the turn. He hasn't really exploited me. A lot of players might have exploited me by starting to bet more on the turn instead of checking back. If I'm going to call a lot of bets on the flop, and that's what I think you should be doing as well. If someone's floating you a lot on the flop, just keep on betting. They're not going to want to call 2 sets of bets, and it's going to take a big play, big pair of balls for them to call you and raise you on the turn with very little. And if they're floating you very light, by definition, they don't have a real hand all that much on the turn. So you can power away with the top pair, weak pair, over pairs for value, total bluffs as well if you want. Okay, it's a slow time of day at Stars in general. I think it's early afternoon Irish time, early morning American time. Flopped a pretty monstrous combination, flush and straight draw here. I'm just going to 3-bet. I expect him to get it all in, and I don't know, maybe even a favourite over something he might have. Certainly I've made the nuts, so hopefully he stays now. That's okay. Again, just these small pair hands, even as coordinated as you like this, no good. The thing about PokerStars is the rake is much higher for heads-up games. It's twice as high as the likes of Full Tilt. So maybe I should have made this video over there. There's always lots of heads-up action on that side, and the rake really is a big deal at these levels. It's a pretty premium hand. I could 4-bet this hand, but I think I might play just as well if I call, see what the flop will bring. He's stuck a bit now as well, so you might want to be inflating the pot a lot. Certainly going to call this flop. Don't really like the idea of raising with just this straight draw, non-nut flush draw. Okay, first hand of this heads up match over here. I might 3-bet this hand, see how he starts to play against me. Over here, okay, this guy's given up on the turn a lot, so I say he's got something here. I'm not going to raise him, certainly not going to call him. And let's see what happens over here. and he's called one bet. I think I'll blast away one more time. Okay, it's the first hand. He might give me credit for something big like 3 aces here. Might be a bit too optimistic to hope for that. It's also quite likely he called the flop quite light and isn't planning to get all the money in. If he shoves here, even though it's only another $76, whatever it is, I'll just fold. Top 2 pair here, leave this out. He calls. Might try one more time. Not sure how light he's calling these spots with the flush on the board. It's a pretty good hand here to call a 3-bet with. I'm going to consider. I think I'll call the flop and bet the turn if he checks. It's not a great board for him if he hasn't actually hit it. And I've made a small straight here. I wouldn't want to play a huge pot here. If he check raises, I'll likely just fold, even though I flopped the third nuts. Okay, over here I'll also just fold. He caught me this time. Okay, yeah, I've got the third nuts, but I could be drawing absolutely dead, and it's not a board that I expect him to check raise a huge amount. And now he's let out the turn. Small enough lead. I'd probably call him if I had the nut flush or the nut straight, and maybe fold the river. But I'll just fold this hand. A bad hand here and here. This hand's probably too weak to raise even heads up, even from the button. So I'm going to keep continuation betting until I have a good reason otherwise. Usually I'll bet about 80% of the pot. If a guy starts playing back at me a lot, I'm going to tone it down and do it a little bit less. I'm also going to lead the flop quite a lot into, especially into guys who don't continuation bet all that much. And it's 3-bet and call. And I flopped a nut flush draw with nothing else. It's probably a pretty good spot to just call. If I top pair and a nut flush draw, I'd think about raising and getting it in. Now I've got top pair and a nut flush draw. A big lead from him is kind of worrying though. Okay, we said he was playing fairly. He was giving up a lot on the turn. If he hadn't actually got anything. Now that might have changed since he did bet the turn pretty big once or twice there, and he did check raise me. I think I'll just give this up though. Top pair nut flush draw. It's a pretty big fold in this spot, but I think it's just too likely he's got a 2 pair or better. And it's a good hand here, big fistful of big cards. I don't check raise the flop very much. I'm going to try it this time. Just flop bottom pair and a bad straight draw. Didn't really want to call. I've turned one more straight draw, but I think I'll just check and give up. And okay, here he's called the flop. A scary card has come in the turn. Completes some straights. Completes a flush. I used to always give up here. Now I sometimes keep on barreling away, but this time I'll just check and give it up. Let's see what happens. Big pair here. I'll 3-bet this one. And I flopped a straight draw to go with my overpair. And well, okay, big raise here. If we were just down to 100 big blinds each, I'd probably be getting it in here. This deep, I'll let it go. And I'd like to find out what these small bets mean on the turn. I'm probably going to have to check some hands on the turn that I intend to continue playing with. And see if he keeps betting, see if I can get a good handle on what the smaller turn bets mean. And that was a pretty good spot for him to bet small on the turn with the 3 flush on the board anyway. It's a good chance I didn't actually have anything, and it'll be hard for me to continue. Gonna check raise here, which I like to do fairly unpredictably with a variety of hands here. I'll continue on here, this 3-bet pot. And again, he's called me. Like, this is a spot where I'd like to have turned a flush and checked to him and see if he's gonna pump away half the pot here. But as it is, okay, he tries it anyway. I think I'm gonna check raise him and see if he'll just go away. And again, even though I've got this straight draw, I can't really call if he shoves it in. Well, we're creating a monster pot here, but I do have the nuts at the moment. That's moderately likely that he also has aces. That's not really a great board for me. Okay, he's got a straight. Oh, this is not a good spot for me. Okay, I'm going to shove here in case he's got something like 2 pair and folds, but I really expect to be called the vast majority of the time here. And I kind of got myself in trouble on the turn. On the other hand, he's not stop calling, so maybe the small bet shows weakness of some sort on the turn. And I've made a monster here. And he folds. Okay, that's a big pot and a pretty awkward spot for me. I was very worried on the river there. And I almost gave up despite getting a very good price to steal the pot. Okay, and this is something to remember here. This guy, he put in an enormous amount of bets with that Queen 10-9 Jack hand. It was a pretty good hand, but normally it'd slow down at some point. It's it's a hand that plays quite nicely post flop and it's never going to have a huge edge pre flop. And just checked fairly quickly here. I kind of decided earlier that with this guy, it's likely that he's got a this very quick check call on this paired board could well be a flush draw. Should I try and bluff him off it? I decided probably not. And yeah, he did make a flush. And I'm going to try and play some big pots with this guy. He's got a big stack. He might get it in quite loose post flop now. He's going to be quite confident. Over here, this was a pretty good spot to call him down on the turn, I think. Likely for him to fire away with nothing. I don't really feel that I've got value in betting the queens here, although it's possible. Oh, he's got a big full house. Okay. Now, what to do if he bets this river? A tough spot. I was probably going to fold, but I could have considered calling. And here I've made top 2 pair. I think I'll check raise him. He's probably getting a bit frustrated with me here. So I think I'll get it in if he wants to 3-bet the flop. Now I've turned a straight draw. He's bet these spots a lot. If he bets small here, I'm going to call. That's a pretty bad river card for me. Well, maybe my 2 pair will hold up. Yeah. And should I fire this turn? I don't really like firing these spots. There's too many ways for him to call me down with bad stuff after nothing happened on the flop. Okay, and again I'm looking for opponents. There just aren't any other opponents waiting for heads-up games at 51, 1, 2, 2, 4. And realistically, I'd rather make the video at 2 comparable stakes rather than rather than two widely separated stakes. Alright, well here I've turned a flush draw to improve my hand, a nut flush draw. A pair of aces is a pretty likely hand for him to just call me down with on the flop. An ace with a bad kicker. Well, this is of course the danger of betting this hand, despite having a nut flush draw and straight draw. I could get blown off my nut flush draw if he's check raise. What's the check raising here? I think I'll give him credit for having a big hand most of the time here, and probably in fact having Jack Queen quite a lot, having made a straight. Pretty weak hand here. I could fold this one. Well, that's strange. I thought when I checked the flop and he'd bet quickly, I would pick it up very quickly on the turn, but he folded the river anyway. Okay, we've got a new opponent over here. And another good hand to 3-bet. Well, that's a pretty good flop as well. Top pair, good kickers and a wrap. And I'd like to get it just in on this flop. Two pair here, massively dangerous board. I'd almost rather call a pot bet than this $2 bet. I'll just let him have it. And with some opponents, you can really think that a smaller bet is almost always going to be for value, and the bigger bet, well, the bigger bet could be a bluff or could be for value. Weak enough pre-flop hand here with this double gap, but a pretty monster flop for me. I made 2 pair with a redraw here. I've hit my redraw, but it brings a flush possible. This is a difficult spot. If he leads out, he does lead out. He bets very big here. You might sometimes think that a backdoor flush is a bit less likely to have come in. On the other hand, the action in this hand doesn't really mean that's the case. I'll just fold. Or will I? Yeah, I'll just let him have it. It's a really close one there. I think, aside from bluffing quite a lot, I think he's could also be value betting the same straight. But there is also a lot of ways he could have made a flush. Pretty good hand here, 2 pair and a big flush draw. Weak enough hand here to defend the blinds with. Kind of thought about leading the flop. I think we're going to check raise this flop. I haven't had much success against this guy check raising the flop. He always seems to call and beat me on the turn. And it's likely to happen again here. Oh well, I've made top and bottom pair. It's probably good. It is good, yeah. I really don't have very much here. I mean, something that a lot of players don't realise, or something that they underestimate, is the value of flopping a baby pair, like bottom pair or something, to go with your draw. It really is great. It's not much good if you're up against a set, but if you're up against a draw or an over pair or 2 pair or anything like that, there's so many ways you can make 2 pair, your trips or something, and you can end up winning. It gives you all those extra outs. And that's a pretty monstrous turn card. It's a very dry flop, but that doesn't necessarily narrow his range, because he's Just continuation betting, and I've rivered the second nut straight. Every reason to think it's good. If I was faced with a check raise here, well, I'm certainly calling because there's a small amount left. If there was a bigger amount left, even though it would seem so highly unlikely that he could have, let's check this one, that he could have made that backdoor straight, I would probably still be folding to this, to betting a raise on the river, the check raise there. It would just be too much money to believe that he was messing around. And maybe I should be playing a bit more aggressively in this board over here. I could have just led the turn. I think I'll check and call the river. And this is nice that he checks his hand back. It would be very thin value to try and get bet with the aces there, but it would be possible, and I was planning to call with a smaller pair. And I think it's a lot easier for people to bluff, to start bluffing on those rivers and not balance their range properly by value betting with one pair. And it really is a spot where you can where you still can get value betting with aces on a river like that. On a river where kind of most of the draw is missed, and it's likely that the other guy's calling you down fairly light in or out of position. A monstrous hand here. I'm gonna check raise hopefully and get it all in. And bottom two here to go with my pair of aces. That's sort of the worst card in the deck for me there. Oh, what did he hit? Oh, the backdoor flush. Okay. I'll just call. Again, getting counterfeited. And I'll just fold. I tend to believe this when someone check calls on the top card pairs and they lead out. It is quite believable. It's a decent spot to bluff, but it's also quite believable that they were check calling with that and decided to lead out when they hit trips. And I've made a bit of a draw here. I wonder. Okay, he's giving up on the flop. Hopefully that means check is usually a give up on the flop, but it's going to be hard to know. Instant check back on the flop. Does that mean showdown value? Obviously not. I should probably just bet here, overpair, some kind of middle pair, flush draw. I see one more card, and if he continues betting here, I'll just give up. Yeah, I let him have it here. That's a bad hand over here. Pretty weak hand, could fold this one. This guy's actually played snug enough pre-flop, which means I will tend to raise more hands from the button just for the sheer steal value. There isn't that much stealing typically pre-flop in pot limit Omaha, but occasionally, even here in this heads-up game, you can get two players playing tightish pre-flop, and some spots for some stealing, or at least some spots where you can open a couple more hands just because of the value of getting the folds. I'm gonna raise this flop. Haven't really made a play like this so far, and it's hard for him to call without three jacks. Let's fold this one. Pretty nice hand here. And see, anything else I wanted to talk about? I wanted to talk in this about playing especially aggressive opponents. This guy's been, I suppose, moderately aggressive certainly recently after he won that very big pot off me. A couple of ways you can adapt to them. Certainly don't go folding to 3-bets pre-flop. You want to call in position. Any hand that's good enough to open with is going to be good enough to call a 3-bet. Certainly get it in when you go and flop something like 3 queens. That's nice for me there. You can find some spots maybe instead of getting thin value, especially on the river, where you can check and snap them off. You can also check and snap them off on the turn if you actually hit something. Something I find when I'm playing myself is I get the idea that I should be checking a big hand to a guy in the turn, and then I get carried away and I see I've hit a big hand and I raise it anyway, and I realise after the hand, I bet it anyway, realise after the hand maybe I should have checked instead. But you only need to do some of the time. I've got a flopped top pair and a straight draw here. It's a stack size is pretty good for me to raise because he will be worried about, he won't really want to commit all this without an overpair, or with only an overpair. I was going to say they're good because I'm still committed to calling. I actually thought he had a bit less. I kind of have to call him now anyway, which didn't really want to call off all that. And we have magically hit the same straight. I was actually ahead, I think, with my pair of 9s. But a spot like that where you can offer him a bit more, a bit worse than 2-1, where he's really got to fold some hands. It's a good spot to play at him on the flop with a hand like I had there, not with a total bluff, because then you end up, you don't want to put in a whole lot of money when you've got nothing. But with a hand like that where it still is a load of outs, and in this case it could even be a head. Could raise this hand, I'll just let it go. Okay, this hasn't actually happened all that much. Usually these flush boards have come down and I've missed them. I certainly think the first bet there is for value. Got a queen high flush, big flushes don't come along that often. Now the board is paired. I think checking back and probably calling the river is best. He could be bluffing, he could have tried to value bet worse. Could have made 3 6s. If he's value betting worse, it's almost certainly a flush. But yeah, I'm certainly planning to call. If he checked, I think I would also bet for value. It's also possibly called with a bigger flush. He did call with a bigger flush on the flop. That's kind of the risk you take. And if the if the board hadn't paired, we would have got to talk a little bit more about non-nut flushes and how to think about them, how to react in that spot. I would be trying to get value from that queen high flush if the board hadn't paired, but I would not be planning to get it all in for here for the guts of 2 buy-ins. I wouldn't be planning to get 1 buy-in in either. In a more aggressive game, I might have it against a very aggressive opponent. This guy's played pretty well against me. I think he's alright. He's hit some cards, but he's played fairly appropriately aggressively. I trapped there with the ace high flush. Not really what I expected from him, but certainly a possibility. There was also a possibility he could have called with the king high flush. Here flopped a big hand. Let's get it in, let's see what happens. And okay, he had outflopped me. This flush board, bet anyway. Let's check raise this one, see if he bets here. Okay, Okay, I thought he might get carried away after winning a big pot. Now I don't want to check raise him on the turn, but I'm certainly going to call him down. And I'll call him again on the river if necessary. At least I was planning to. It's a very quick bet. Quite a big bet. Straight is fairly likely. See, I was planning to call him, now I'm kind of thinking of folding. Let's see. And he's made a second nut straight. Okay, played that fairly well. I'd normally just call this hand. Could also 3-bet. And this is a decent flop for me. Top pair, flush draw, some backdoor straight possibilities. Not a great flop for me to get it all in here, but you know, by check raising to $32, I'm not threatening to get it all in just yet. And I'll certainly fire that turn. It's completed the biggest and most obvious straight draw. It's also completed a different straight draw. It's possible that I have it, but it's very possible that he's calling down with a hand that didn't make a straight, especially a pair and a bigger flush draw. And I really want that hand to fold. And I feel from this guy checking on a flop like this is giving up most of the time. That he's not trapping with it. Small cards here, a good few gaps. I could fold this as well pre-flop. This is a decent spot to check back. I've got pretty much nothing but except a nut straight draw, and it's a very good turn card for me to bluff. Should I have a go here? No, I don't think so. And I'll 3-bet this one. And I think I might check raise the flop here. And I've flopped a bad wrap, a very bad wrap. A lead here, and I'm planning to bet the river as well. It's such a bad wrap, I'm just going to call here. Okay, I've hit a straight. What to do? I think I'll just bet and get it in with the short stack. That's a worryingly quick raise. And he did in fact turn the nuts. I was kind of worried once he shoved there. I did think the nut straight was likely, but I figured I got too much in to fold. This check raise here with I wonder is there value over here. I'm not going to call this. I don't want to play a pot here with aces. I wonder is there a little bit of value here. Probably not. I'm only going to get called maybe by the same hand. And he did it the same hand. Let's check. Just probably check fold here. Too much else going on. I've left a bare nut flush draw here. An okay spot to check raise. Again, I don't want to get it all in with just this nut flush draw. Still, it's a pretty good spot to check raise. I was actually half hoping that I would hit a flush. Well, I was very much hoping I'd hit a flush, and I was thinking of check raising a flush on the turn. I think I might check shove this card as well, though. The ace, it could be a scare card for a lot of my hands, but it's actually quite good for me. And there's a decent chance I'm ahead, and I've certainly got a load of outs. So I think it's good to give him a chance to bluff with this one. And he might not leave me bluffing. I might get a fold out of jacks up or something. Or maybe a hand with ace king in it. Here I've flopped not very much, under pair to the ace and a small flush draw. I've made two flush draws. Let's bet and get it in here. This is an okay hand to 3-bet here. Small cards. I would like a slightly smaller flop. I think this guy calls a lot on this kind of flop, but not this time. So I did think about giving up on the flop. We can't here. And don't have very much here. This is a pretty good hand to 3-bet. It's Ace King double suited. Not a good flop for me. And let's check here. And that's a pretty perfect turn card. I think it's a good chance of getting a little bit of value here. And yeah, and even getting some value on the river maybe. No, I don't think I would have got much from him if I checked and called there either, so maybe that was the best option anyway. Probably should have played a bit more aggressive here. I did flop a overpair. I've now made a straight draw. This hand is too weak. And these are sometimes tough hands to play. I flopped top 2 pair, nice hand, and a straight draw. Still there is a straight possible, so I'm going to keep the pot small here. I've now made a straight. Again, I'm just going to check. There's no flush draw, so there's one big thing I don't have to worry about protecting against. King Jack is also not particularly likely. The same hand is likely. Possibly I should just check and call in the river, but in my experience people don't bluff those pots all that much anyway. Really what you want is to have a bit more of an aggressive game going on there, and you can get value from even the likes of 2 pair. Insta check on the flop is often giving up from this guy. Okay, instantly checked the flop, instantly called the turn. The pot is just small enough. I think he wants to show down really. Yeah, and he does have a king. And I don't think I was going to be able to bluff him there. I'm going to try here. I'm going to lead the flop, hit a blank on the turn and check raise him. I think there's a chance he'll play it out there, but he doesn't. And I'll try a 3-bet with this hand. Small connected cards. And even heads up, these flops are frightening in 3-bet pots that he might just give up. Well, I don't think he's got a 4 all that much, but well, now I do. I was going to say, most likely hand for him to do is to call me down with a small, with an ace with some big kickers. Doesn't really matter. No matter what, I can't really call here. Here I've made 2 pair, slightly light call here. And really, I can only call here if I'm relying on being able to bluff the river at least sometimes. I think this is one of the better cards for me to bluff the river on. Completes a possible bigger straight and a flush. What's he call with? He did turn the nut flush. Okay, he flopped it really, did he? They're not straight. I actually thought there was a good chance he'd fold that hand, and excellent chance he'd fold smaller hands. Not got much over here. Should I try and catch a bluff over here? I'll bet this flop while I'm thinking about it. Okay, I'd say he's most likely got me beat, but not this time. Oh, I have 2 pair there, slightly tight fold there, but there's a good chance I was behind anyway. I've flopped a bad opening a straight draw. I was thinking of check raising the flop. I might lead the turn instead. If I made a flush here, there's a good chance to get value here. I think even from the small flush on a paired board. And well, I just think 2 pair is reasonably likely, and I think 2 pair folds here a lot. Maybe I shouldn't bluff him here after the last time. And this is very strange because well, he's checked back the flop. You know, I'm really expected to think that he's got a full house here. Okay, I mean, from his perspective, I could have a big full house, but I don't really feel like shoving the river just to see if he tried to trap me on the flop. But it was certainly an odd spot, an odd play from him, and I think it can be a bluff a lot of the time. The flush draw is pretty good for my hand here, especially in the chance I'm up against something like Ace King. Well, specifically Ace King, Queen King, Jack King, that I've got a lot of extra outs against those hands. Aces double suited is always nice over here. And I think a check raising, I think I'll just bet and try and get it in. Now that I've made a full house, it's even nicer. It's worrying though that he might not call me here, but with the short stacks I much prefer, in relation to the pot, I much prefer shoving here than trying to catch a bluff. Just because, you know, he can make a hero call much more easily for, you know, getting 3-1, but he doesn't this time. But in a different circumstance, if I thought there's a good chance he's totally missed there, that he doesn't have showdown value, well, really, if the stacks were bigger, I think I would have checked there quite often on the river. Here I've made a bad 2-pair. He's picked off a few of my bluffs before. Still, it would be an ambitious spot to try and get value here. I think I'll just check. And maybe I could have bet the flop here for value, but instead I'll just, now that he's bet, I'll call, and certainly calling the river. And certainly betting the river as well. I think he expects me to be bluffing there, and I think I would have got a call from 2-pair quite a lot. Now over here I've made a bad flush draw, well, an okay flush draw, a bad straight draw, some backdoor stuff. I could consider checking back here. Straight flush draw actually. Let's fold this one. But okay, I bet he folds. Okay, we're nearly at the end of this video. The time's almost up. The main thing I would like you to take from this video, the main thing I was trying to get at is that you should be adapting to your opponents and trying to figure out what different actions are likely to mean. If there are certain signs that that your opponent is giving up, or that he's got a big hand, or maybe that he's called a flop light, and it's not all that easy to say. You'd like to, if you could see his hands every time, it would be a lot of extra info that you could use to figure that one out. But a lot of the time you just have to go with his actions on future streets and what they suggested he had, and you know, you can get leveled on this one, and you can make mistakes, and it's not always easy to read into exactly how your opponent is playing, but I think very often you can get a handle on something like, for example, that this guy raises pre-flop and gives up, or he 3-bets pre-flop and gives up the flop with 150 big blinds. I think that's likely to be just a check fold and not a trap, and not calling down for showdown value. He continuation bets the flop quite light with hands like overpairs. This is the kind of hand where I really want to check raise this guy on the turn. I'd like the stacks to be a little bit shallower so that like he could bet like 80 and I could shove it all in for 240 and something, and I'd call all the time. He didn't bet the turn this time. That's a change. I wonder, does that mean he's more or less likely to have a flush? I was certainly going to call the river anyway. But I didn't really expect him to bet it that much, to bluff it that much, and pretty much never to value bet a worse hand. Anyway, like I was saying, you've got to realise your opponents are predictable, and to just try and figure out what they're doing, try and exploit that predictability. You'll notice I haven't mentioned too much about not trying to be predictable yourself. While that is important, at least in theory, in practice, I think it's something you should already be doing automatically, and that you should be mixing up your play enough not to be too obvious, and especially because you're struggling, because you're trying to exploit the other guy's mistakes, you're going to be making different plays in different spots all the time anyway. So, yeah, I think it's possible that I have been playing a little bit more predictable, a little bit more exploitable than some other guys might focus on playing. Certainly planning to call the river here. Even though I think if he bet, I was likely behind, but I would have been ahead often enough to call. I hope in this video you've also got an idea of hand values, of types of hands you want to peel light on the flop, types of hands you want to think about 3-betting pre-flop, types of hands you want to fold from the button or from the blinds. Maybe also some things about board texture that I didn't mention specifically, but that you might pick up. When is it a good time to bluff? What's a good card to bluff the turn with? To bluff the river with? Let this guy have it. Something we haven't talked about much is bluff raising the river. A couple of spots where this guy over here on the right, especially, I suspected him of not having very much on the river, but I never actually caught him at it. Maybe he's been pretty honest on the river because because I haven't seen him do anything massively out of order. This might be one big pot now before we go. I did think about calling this hand. It's just a little bit too many straight cards that come on the turn. 8, 9, 10, Queen and King are all straight cards. So I decided to raise and hope to get it in against like ace plus a bad straight draw. But maybe calling there was the best plan. Sometimes calling in those spots is the best plan anyway. Actually, I should just fold here. Even though there's some risk of getting outdrawn, even though the board isn't perfectly dry, sometimes you should call anyway and try and trap anyway, just because he doesn't expect it, and because of the big payoff, especially if you do hit a blank or if you do stay ahead. But that's all from me anyway. Good luck and see you in the next video. Bye bye.